right, so let's get started. First thing we're going to do is we are going to work on the background portion of this sign, and we are going to decoupage some red plaid tissue paper onto this wood piece, and then we'll set it aside so it can dry, and we'll start working on some of the other stuff. So I'm going to use my decoupage medium, and I'm just going to apply this to the background. By now y'all should be very familiar with this process because I love to use background tissue on my projects just to give them some interest, and it's a quick and easy way to do it. Now, if you didn't want to buy the background tissue, you could paint your rectangle with warm white or any white you have in your stash, and you could stencil a plaid on there, but I just like to keep it easy. So I'm going to add this plaid to the background with this tissue paper. So just a quick way to finish off that background. Now, I am going to come back and do some shading on here, but that will be after it dries. And with it being a plaid, you would think I would get it on there straight, but apparently I'm not, but it'll be okay. Off a little bit. But, like I said, this is the background, so it's not going to matter a whole lot that I'm off just a little hitch. All right. The tissue paper is really thin, so you don't have to apply a whole lot of decoupage to get it to adhere. So I'm going to put away my decoupage. I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll get back and start working on the main portion of the sign. Alright, so one of the first things I want to do is I want to go ahead and base in the J and the Y with warm white, and I'm also going to go ahead and do the snowflakes too. Now, the easiest way to do the snowflakes would be to grab yourself like a cosmetic sponge. One of these wedges works really well, and all you're going to do, let me set this a little bit out of the way. And I got my 3 snowflakes. I'm just going to pick up some warm white on my cosmetic sponge, and I'm just going to pounce the white on there. It's just quicker than trying to do it with a brush. All right, one done. And I'm not sure. There probably won't be much else done to these snowflakes. So just get them a nice coat of warm white. And let's see. All right. I'll probably come back and pounce them again a little later, but snowflakes are based, so now we're going to base in our J and our Y with warm white. And you really don't need 2 coats. Don't add water to your base coat. You should be able to cover it sufficiently with 1 coat, because we do a few things on top. So just a nice quick coat of warm white to those two letters. And as I mentioned earlier in Facebook posts, this will be the last project for 2022. I'm going to take time off for the holidays, and we should be back early next year. Right. So we're going to want this to dry and then come and put the pattern on for the stripes. Now if you wanted to, you could tape this so that it's nice and straight, but I'm just going to wing it. All right. So those two letters are based. I'm going to dry those, and then I'm going to come back and put the pattern on for the stripes. All right, pattern applied for the stripes. So we are going to go ahead and baste those in with country red. And again, probably one coat will do. We do have dry brushing and shading and highlighting that has to go on top of these. So they don't have to be completely opaque. Now, Anal Me wants to take these off, but I'm not going to. I'm going to trust my brush, which is probably, might not be a good idea, but oh well, that's where we're going. Hopefully this will be a quick and easy project for you for Christmas or winter. We did a Santa the last time, so I thought we'd do a snowman this time. See. So by now, Thanksgiving might be over, I guess. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at the calendar. See which week this comes out. I was spoiled in my old house. I had a stove that had 2 ovens. So this Thanksgiving will be a little different because I need to figure out how I'm going to cook all that stuff in the ovens when I only have one. My sister started inviting people to our house for Thanksgiving before we even moved. She's nice like that. Well, maybe I should have taped these off, huh? All right. This is probably the most tedious part of the whole piece, is getting these stripes on here. I'm using a 1/2-inch flat brush to do these, in case you're wondering. Slowly but surely, we're getting there. Once we get these stripes pasted on, we want to set it aside to dry for a while. Red needs a little bit of time to cure. Otherwise, our dry brushing would just end up being pink. Last stripe, yay! Okay. And while we have red on our brush, we might as well go ahead and paint the berry on our holly cutout. Kill a couple of birds with one stone. Now, I'm going to work on the snowman. And what I like to do with them, I always like to start my snowman off with them being blue. So I'm going to go grab my blue paint, and I have my white paint here. We're going to get a brush out that we like to stipple or smoosh with, and we'll work on our snowman's face next. All right, so I grabbed some Moody Blue, which may seem kind of dark, but it will give a nice shadow in the background. It'll make our snow look cold. So I'm going to base in the face area of my snowman with Moody Blue. I am going to go ahead and tape off the hat brim. Just to give a nice edge there. And let's see. Try to tape off the scarf a little bit too. Right, that'll work. So I'm going to paint my snowman's face first with Moody Blue. Just a quick coat. Again, doesn't have to be opaque. This is just our background. You can see my brush had a little bit of water in it, so it's kind of thin. Okay. All right, let's dry this. And we're going to come in tighter to our snowman. A little spot right there that needs to dry. All right. So now we are going to do what I call smoosh our snowman. And what smooshing is basically just like stippling, except where you would normally pounce your brush on your palette to take out some of the paint. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep all that paint in our brush. So you want to load your brush up with some warm white. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start just kind of smooshing, and it's stippling. You go like this. Smooshing, you're on your side, and you're kind of moving that paint into the areas that you want it to be in. So I'm going to just kind of pounce and move that paint to fill up this area. Now I still want to be able to see the blue behind it, because that's what's going to make it look cold. Okay, if you get too many ridges or lines, all you want to do is just go back and kind of pounce over them so they flatten out and disappear. And you just reload your paint as often as you need to. And this first layer, I usually start at the outside edges and work my way in towards the middle. So I'm going to go over here to this outside edge, and then I'm going to start backing up towards the middle. So keeping it kind of laying on the side. That way you can just kind of move that paint around. If you wanted to just stipple, that would work too. But I have been painting snowmen like this for years. So this is the way I always do it. All right. So I want to let this dry a little bit. You can see it already looks kind of fluffy. So I'm just going to dry this. And then what I want to do is I want to do another coat on here, but I'm going to start in the center this time because that's where the center of his face is. So that's with the brightest area that I want. So I'm going to start in the center and just kind of work in a circle. And as I start losing paint in my brush, Then I start moving to the outside edge. So I'm losing a little bit of paint, so I'm going to back over here to the outside edge. So I don't have as much paint on my brush. I'm not leaving as much at those outside edges. So this should go pretty quickly. Now see, I have a lot of paint still in that brush there, so I'm just going to flip it over. And just kind of smoosh that paint in. All right. That looks good. A couple little areas I need to knock down. And then you can wash out your brush. So we want to let this dry. And then we're going to put the pattern on for his face. So I'll be back when I have the pattern on. All right, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to float some shading on his face, under the hat brim, and above the scarf. And I'm going to do that with some very well blended out moody blue. So I don't want this to be a real harsh float, so you want to blend it out so it's nice and soft. So I'm just going to go across the top here. Kind of round those corners out a little bit. And if you like to mock your floats, this would be a good place to do that. Just to soften them and blend them a little bit more. And then I'm going to go right above his scarf the same way. All right. Cool. Now what I want to do is I want to give him some cheeks. And I'm going to do that by dry brushing melon right on the tops of his smile lines, where his little smile ends. You want to come in and dry brush some melon. Now I like to dry brush using the Langnickel short round sable brush. And I'm sure you've seen this before, but it's a dry brush, so you don't add any water to your brush. And you're going to pick up some paint on your brush, and I just kind of rub it around on my palette. First I go one way in a circle, and then I go the other way. I'd say clockwise and counterclockwise. And then what I do is I come to my towel back here and I wipe it off. And then I go to my hand in this area. So when I hit my hand with the brush, it feels cool. And as I continue to rub, it loses its coolness. And once it's not cold anymore, that's a good indicator that you've taken out enough paint from your brush that you can go to your piece. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to ignore that his nose is there, just so I can give him some nice, round cheeks. And then reload my brush. I go through all the same steps again, so I can give him another cheek. On the other side, now this cheek's going to be a little higher than that one, because his smile is a little higher. So I set that right on top where his smile ends. And I like them pretty big. All right, then I can wash out my brush. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and base in my eyes. And I can go ahead and line my mouth with lamp black. And that way those can dry while we work on our nose. So he's got some oval-shaped eyes. And my eyes are never the same size. One is always a little bigger than the other one. Looks like I could have shaken that paint a little bit more. But it'll be just fine. Let me come back and give that another coat. See if we can get it a little bit better this time. Much better. Helps if you shake your paint. If you learned anything today, that would be it. Shake your paint good before you try to paint with it. All right, so I'm just going to line his mouth with lamp black. And I always like to put little stirrups on the ends of his mouth, just so you know where his smile ends. So now, while we let that dry, we're going to work on his nose. And I'm going to get just a little closer. And we're going to need some burnt orange, some burnt umber, and some moon yellow, and the warm white that we have on our plate already, our palette already, our plate. What am I thinking? I must be hungry. And it's nowhere near dinner time yet. So I am going to use, this is a good sized nose. So I'm going to go ahead and use my number 4 round. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to base this nose in with burnt orange, and I'm going to do it using shape following strokes. I'm going to think like a carrot. A carrot just isn't a flat triangle. It has some shape, some curve, and some ridges. And so I'm going to load my brush. I didn't put any water in it. I just picked up a bunch of burnt orange paint, and I'm going to start at the back side of my nose. You see how I have that curved? So I'm going to do shape following strokes. Don't worry too much about this bottom edge. And I'm just going to make this carrot nose. And you just keep on stroking, and you should get some nice little ridges to make it look like more like a carrot. If you wanted to, you could just paint it in. As I get towards the tip, I just kind of tap in. You could paint it in with burnt orange and shade and highlight it. But this is just the way I do carrot noses. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just wipe this brush out, and I'm going to pick up some moon yellow on my dirty brush. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and pull those shape following strokes across the top of the nose. I'm going to try not to make them all end in the same place. But all I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of a highlight to the top of that carrot nose. And again, as I get to the end, I just kind of tap. And once again, wipe that brush out. And this time I'm going to turn my guy over and I'm going to pick up some burnt umber on the dirty brush. And I'm going to go along the bottom and stroke the shading along the bottom. And this can get up into the yellow if you want. If it doesn't, that's okay. But again, I'm using those shape following strokes so that I keep the look of roundness and ridges to my nose. Or to his nose, not my nose. My nose. Well, I guess my nose is kind of round. And again, just tap on the bottom there. Okay. Now, you can wash that brush out. And then just pick up some warm white. And we're just going to tap a highlight across the very top of the nose. Now, I'm going to leave a little edge of the nose showing there. So I'm not going right against the very top edge. I'm dropping down just a little bit. And I'm going to just tap another highlight across the top of that nose. I'm going to bring some of it down a little bit. There we go. Right, we have one more thing to do to this nose, but it needs to dry. So let's go work on our eyes. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to take my liner brush and thin down some Moody Blue. And I'm going to line a shadow above each eye with this thinned Moody Blue. So I'm going to use my liner brush. I'm going to start about halfway down on one side of the eye. I'm going to start on the tip of my brush. As I come around the top, I flatten that brush out a little bit, and then I come back up onto the tip on the other side. I'm going to do the same thing on this eye. So start on the point. As you get around the top, you flatten that brush out a little bit, and then you come back up to the point above the eye. And what that does is it helps to set the eye into its head a little bit. So now we want to get our brush that we like to dry brush with. I'm drying mine a little bit. It's one of the advantages of using these short round sables is you can scrub them on your towel and dry them. I'm going to pick up a little bit of warm white, and I'm going to dry brush a little bit of warm white highlighting inside each eye. Just so it's not so black and, shapeless. So the next thing I want to do is I want to give him some irises in his eye. And I'm going to do that with my liner brush and Moody Blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a crescent-shaped stroke in the bottom of each eye. But I'm going to paint it so it's set just a hair above the bottom edge of the eye. Now don't let it scare you, crescent-shaped stroke. I do it the cheater way. I start over here on one side, and I just line that around the bottom. That way I can be sure to leave that little edge. And then I come here and I make the rest of the stroke. So I have this nice crescent-shaped stroke in his eye. I'm going to do the same thing in the other eye. So I'm just going to line along the lower edge so I can keep that little rim. And then I'm going to finish off that stroke. So now I want to highlight the center of that stroke. So I didn't wash my brush out. It still has blue in it. I'm going to pick up a little warm white and just kind of mix it on my palette to get a lighter value of that moody blue. All I'm going to do is I'm going to line this lighter value through the bottom center of each of those crescent strokes I just did. Okay? Now his little eyes need some eyelashes. So we are going to take our liner brush and thin down some lamp black. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to just squiggle some eyelashes on his eyes. So I like to take my liner brush and sit it down in the top of the center of the eye, and then I just kind of push it and squiggle. Now you could line them individually if you wanted to, but this way is just quick and easy for me. So just push and squiggle. So he has a few little eyelashes. I also like to squiggle just a couple in the corners, and then just a dot in the center corner. All right? So the last thing we want to do to this eye is wash your brush out so you don't have black in it. Pick up some straight warm white, and you're just going to tap a little bit brighter highlight down the center of each of those blue strokes. You're also going to set down a little highlight in the black part of his eye. And then I also like to set down a smaller highlight kind of diagonally across from that larger highlight in his eye. All right, so there's his eyes. I think that his nose is dry enough now that we can go back to it and finish it. So what I want to do is I want to get some moody blue, blend it out really well. This is just going to make its nose look cold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this very well blended out moody blue, and I'm going to float across the bottom of his nose right on top of that brown shading that I did. And all that does is just kind of makes his nose look cold, if that makes any sense. All right. So there, we got a face done. So I think that we could probably go back to our letters now. And one of the things that I want to do first is I want to erase any pattern lines that I can see there. All right. All right. I think that's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry brush some highlighting down the center of each letter across all the stripes with warm white. So I'm going to go through all my steps again. And I'm going to just dry brush. And this mainly on the red stripes, because it's not going to show up on the, didn't take out enough paint. It's not going to show up on the white so much. I want to give that a little highlight through the center. I'm going to do this on the J also. We can go over here and start this way, and we'll meet in the middle. All right, looking good. So now this is going to seem a little strange, I know. But what I want you to do is I want you to float shading on every side of each letter with some very well blended out country red to begin with. Here again, if you like to mop, this would be a good place to do it, just to soften. And it's going to go all the way around the letter. It's nice as you can stop in a red section and reload. Okay, now I'm going to do the other side. All right. Now since the tops of these, I didn't shade on those because they're red, it wouldn't show up anyway. But when we get over here to the Y, we are going to go across the top. So I'm going to go across the tops, down the sides. Turn it over. We'll go across the bottom here. And I'm going to start here because I wanted this corner to dry a little bit before I hit it again. Okay, go down here. And let's do this inside edge. All right. So we'll let that dry a little bit. We can go ahead and base our hat in, and I'm going to do it with black forest green, just because I wanted to use a different color. So let's go ahead and base in the hat and the brim with black forest green. Just makes it a little more interesting if it's not just a black hat. And here again, one coat will do. Because we have the shading and highlighting to go on top. We're not done with our letters yet, so don't panic about those. I just wanted that shading to dry on. I didn't put my pattern on quite straight enough. Right. And let's see. I think we're going to go ahead and base his scarf in with Moody Blue. So just give that a quick coat of Moody Blue, and then we'll go back to our letters. A little large for my painting area. And he's starting to come to life. Last little section. Okay, so we need that to dry. In the meantime, we'll go back to our letters. And what we're going to do is we are going to float shading on them again. Only this time we're going to use a darker blue. We're going to float shading on those letters right over that red shading that we did. We're going to do it with deep midnight blue. You want to blend it out. You don't want it to be real harsh. You want it to be a nice, soft float. And this one is going to go across all the stripes, white and red. So that means we'll go across the top and the bottom of that J, which we didn't have to the last time. So I'm going to float some deep midnight blue, and I'll probably bounce around a little bit just to give some floats time to dry. I'm going to kind of soften it a little bit. Let's go over here to the Y, and I'll just do the top edge of the Y. On both things, both sides. And I can go ahead and do the bottom too. And now I'm going to go back and finish the J. And that just kind of gives the letters a little dimension. I don't know if it, to me it does anyway. It makes it look like they're rounded a little bit. Just take your time. You don't have to hurry through this float. And you can see this letter looks a lot more round than this Y does. And then we'll come back and we'll add a highlight that will even round it out some more. I got myself a little watermark there. Easy to do. The other side. And let's go down this side. Right, this looks good. Fix this area right here a little bit. There we go. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to take my liner brush and some warm white. And I'm going to line that brighter highlight on those candy cane letters. So just thin warm white. I'm going to go just a little right of center. And there we go. And with the Y, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go just a little right of center. All right. Right, let's go to our hat. So I based in the hat with black forest green. So I'm going to dry brush some highlighting on that part of the hat with some Irish moss. Nice bright green to brighten it up. Looks like I could load some more paint into my brush. And this is pretty wide, so my dry brush is going to be pretty wide. And I also want to go across the brim too. And it's actually a pretty wide brim. So don't wash your brush out because I want to dry brush a little bit brighter highlight. So I'm going to take my dirty brush that has the Irish moss in it, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of moon yellow, and I'm just going to dry brush a lighter, brighter highlight. And now that it's brighter, it's going to cover a smaller area. So I'm not going to go quite as wide as I did on the first highlight. All right, the next thing I want to do is I want to float some shading on this hat with lamp black. Some nice soft floats of lamp black. I'm going to go on either end of the hat brim with the lamp black. And then I want to go all four sides of the top of the hat. Get shaded with lamp black. When you get to these corners, you want to walk it out and round them a little bit. I think I want to darken this part of the hat brim just a little bit more. Yeah, that's better. Now I can go across the bottom of the hat next to the hat band. And then across the top of the hat. All right. Okay, so we have his scarf on. So we want to put the pattern on for the scarf. And what we're going to do is we are going to put some stripes on our scarf with thin, warm white. So I want to thin down my warm white a little bit. And you can make these stripes as thick or as thin as you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and use my 1/2 inch brush. I'm going to start in the middle and pull that stripe down. And then as I go away from the middle, I curve that stripe a little bit to give that scarf a little dimension. Okay. And that makes it look like it's kind of puffy and rounded. And stripes don't have to be solid, okay? Unless you want them to be. They can be if you want them to be. And then I'm going to come here and start adding my stripes. Here, now this is going to get a little trickier because we have those letters in the way. But I know you can do it. I'm going to turn this over so I can work on this side. And I'm just turning my brush so that I get to the chisel edge when I need to. And let's see. All right. So let's let those stripes dry. Let's go to our hat band. No, let's go to our little holly cutout. As long as we have Irish moss on our palette, let's go ahead and paint that leaf with Irish moss. Get that done. And then while we're waiting for stripes to dry, let's give our snowflakes another coat of warm white. So all I'm going to do with this cosmetic wedge is I'm just going to cut off the dried part and just go back and pounce warm white on my snowflakes again. There, nice bright white. That works. And it has a little bit of texture, so it gives you more of a look of snow. All right, I think we'll go ahead and base it in with Country Red. So just one coat will do. I'm sure you'll do a much nicer job of basing this in. Right. So I'm going to set this guy aside for just a minute to dry. And I'm going to come back and work on this background piece. And so I want to add some more interest to this piece. So I'm going to take my little cosmetic sponge, and I need a little bit more warm white, and I'm going to stencil some random clusters of dots onto this background. First with warm white, just to break it up a little bit and brighten it. And who knows how much of this will get covered, with our little snow guy. But some of it will peek through. So let's see, a little bit over here. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this one more time, the sponge one more time. And then I'm going to pounce some burnt umber onto the background. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the white. Just going to go randomly with some burnt umber. Helps if you don't think about it too much and just plaster it on there. And it can go over your white too. It doesn't have to stay away from it. Okay, I think I'm going to call that enough. And so I want this to dry. This will help hide the fact that I put that tissue on there crooked too. We just want to get our dots dry. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around and float shading around all four sides with burnt umber. And I'm going to use my 3/4 inch flat brush because I want this to be a pretty wide float. So I'm just going to go all the way around the outside edge. And this kind of ages it a little, and it makes those dots not stand out quite so much. You could use, if you didn't want to use the plaid paper, you could find some cute Christmas napkins and decoupage those on there. Could really change the look of it. All right, cool. That looks pretty, not pretty, but once we get this guy on, then it looks way different. So don't worry about that too much, that background, because it's just there for a place to stick this guy. So what I want to do now is I want to come and I'm going to float a highlight on my berry with melon. So just a little touch of melon. You could still get in yours. I'm just going to float a highlight across the top with melon, and that's going to soften out in a little bit. And then what I want to do is I want to float shading on the lower edge, and I'm going to do that with country red plus burnt umber, more burnt umber than red. And I'm just going to float a shadow in the bottom of that that berry. I want to work on my holly leaf, so I'm going to float a highlight across the top and center of that holly leaf with moon yellow. So, top, and then I'm going to give it its center vein line. So let's let that dry. And we can float shading on that leaf with black forest green. So bottom edge. All the way around here to this tip. And then I also want to float above the center vein line. Let me dry that real quick. And then what I want to do is I want to float at the base of the leaf. Where it tucks in to the behind the berry. And the berry's going to get a warm white highlight. So we can set it aside to dry. So let's go to our scarf. We're going to dry brush highlighting on our scarf with warm white. No water, just your favorite dry brush and warm white paint. Now you could fancy this scarf up a whole lot more if you wanted to, but I wanted to keep it pretty simple. So I'm going to go through the center, the part that's around his neck. And across the ties, or whatever you call them, ends. All right. We're going to float shading on the scarf with deep midnight blue, which was that blue we used on the letters. So I'm going to go on the scarf next to the lettering first, because that's an easy place to go. And I may come back and float this again just to deepen it a little bit. I'm going to go on the ends of the scarf next to the center of the scarf. So go to this other side and go on the end next to the center. And then also around that J. I am going to go on this centerpiece on both outside edges. So this ends up being like a back-to-back float right there. So both sides. We're going to go top and bottom of the ties. That looks like it might be dark enough. So top and bottom of the ties. And then we're going to go top and bottom of the part that goes around his neck. Okay. We need to go to our hat band, and we are going to dry brush some highlighting on the hat band with melon. So just through the center. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some drywall joint tape, and I'm going to add some moon yellow dots to my hat band. And you could pick another color. You could pick the green or whatever, but we use moon yellow in the nose and on the holly leaf. So we need to bring it into the design in another area. So I'm just going to add some dots to this hat band with moon yellow. And then I want to float shading on the hat band, and I'm going to do that with burnt umber with a touch of lamp black, not too much, just a touch. I'm going to go both sides. And then I'm going to go across the bottom next to the brim. All right, so our scarf is going to get this snowflake glued on right about here. And the hat is going to get this holly leaf glued on right about there. So let's grab some glue. So I'm going to glue one of my snowflakes. Maybe. To a scarf. Just about so. And then I'm going to glue my holly leaf and berry in place. And let's see, let's make that. And then I'm going to come back with my background. And I'm going to add some edging onto this background just to finish it off a little bit. So I'm going to take burnt umber and lamp black a little bit together. I don't want straight lamp black because that would be a little too harsh. And I'm just going to add a little trim to this rectangle just to finish it off a little bit. So burnt umber and some lamp black. Just trim the this guy out just to finish it off, give it a nicer edge. Obviously, it doesn't have to be straight. Extra points if yours is straight. And this you can just brush mix as you need more. Okay. Alrighty. And now we can glue our snowman in place. Grab my glue again, back up a little bit. So just gonna decide how he's gonna go. And I think that's good. And then we have a couple extra snowflakes to glue into place. I'm going to put one over here. And I'm going to put one over here. All right. So there you go. A quick and easy sign. I think it would be great for craft shows or anything because it's not that involved. And it's something that can stay out until middle of January or whenever your snow stops falling. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and then I'll see you again next year. Thanks. Bye-bye.